Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about one of the most underestimated biological capacities in the human body, the speed at which the metabolism adapts to the conditions you create for it. Most people think of metabolic adaptation as something that happens slowly, a gradual change over months of dieting, a sluggish response to exercise, a long-term consequence of aging. But the research tells a very different story. The metabolism adapts to new inputs both downward and upward, within days, sometimes within hours. And that speed has profound implications for every dietary decision you make, every meal you skip, and every period of restriction you subject your body to without understanding what is happening inside it in real time. Let me start with the downward adaptation, because this is the one most people experience without recognizing it. Within 24 to 48 hours of significant caloric restriction, the body initiates a coordinated metabolic response that is far more comprehensive than most people realize. Resting metabolic rate begins to decline. Thyroid hormone conversion shifts. T4 production continues relatively normally, but conversion to active T3 decreases and conversion to reverse T3, an inactive blocking form, increases. Leptin levels drop measurably. Sympathetic nervous system tone decreases, reducing the energy cost of basic physiological maintenance. And the gut microbiome begins shifting composition within days, with fiber-dependent beneficial species declining as their substrate availability decreases. This is the part that most dietary advice completely fails to account for. The metabolism does not wait weeks to respond. It begins adapting the moment the signal changes. And it adapts in the direction that maximizes survival under the conditions it perceives, which means reducing energy expenditure, increasing fat storage efficiency, and generating hunger signals that push toward greater intake. The gut microbiome begins shifting composition within 48 to 72 hours of a significant dietary change. The bacterial species that depend on the fiber and polyphenols from a diverse whole food diet decline rapidly when those inputs are removed. The species that are most efficient at extracting energy from whatever is available, particularly from simple carbohydrates and refined inputs, become relatively more dominant. And as their dominance increases, their metabolic outputs, including signaling molecules that promote fat storage and hunger, increase with them. Now here is where the adaptation story becomes genuinely useful, because the same speed that works against you in restriction works for you in restoration. The upward metabolic adaptation that follows adequate, diverse, well-timed nutrition is equally rapid. And this is the part that gives me the most confidence that the conversation about metabolic damage and irreversibility is far more pessimistic than the biology warrants. Within 3 to 5 days of eating at maintenance after a period of restriction, leptin begins to recover. Within 5 to 7 days, T3 levels begin to improve as the gut microbiome produces more of the metabolic support the conversion pathway depends on, and as the physiological stress of scarcity begins to lift. Resting metabolic rate shows early signs of upward movement within the first week, not dramatically, but measurably. According to research, the gut microbiome shows significant compositional shifts within 7 days of a transition to a high-diversity, fiber-rich dietary pattern, with beneficial short-chain fatty acid-producing species beginning to increase and the metabolic outputs associated with them showing parallel improvement. In one study, this gut microbiome recovery within the first week was independently associated with early improvements in satiety hormone function, glucose stability, and self-reported energy, suggesting that the gut was the leading indicator of metabolic recovery rather than a lagging one. The gut changes first. The metabolism follows. The third dimension of this speed dynamic is exercise adaptation, and specifically the metabolic shifts that occur in the first days after beginning or resuming consistent physical activity. Muscle tissue is the most metabolically active tissue in the body. It accounts for the majority of resting energy expenditure, and it is exquisitely responsive to mechanical loading, beginning to upregulate mitochondrial biogenesis, increase glucose transporter expression, and improve insulin sensitivity within 24 to 48 hours of resistance or aerobic exercise exposure. The metabolic effect of exercise is not a long-term adaptation. It is immediate. The gut benefits from this acutely as well. Exercise increases gut motility, accelerates intestinal transit, and promotes the growth of short-chain fatty acid-producing bacterial populations through mechanisms that include increased gut oxygen availability and altered bile acid profiles. According to research, even a 2-week period of light daily walking was sufficient to produce measurable increases in microbiome diversity, demonstrating that the gut-exercise relationship is responsive within the same compressed time frame as the other metabolic adaptations I have described. The fourth dimension is the circadian adaptation, and this is perhaps the most practically actionable piece of the metabolism speed story. The metabolic machinery of the body, insulin sensitivity, cortisol rhythm, gut motility, microbiome feeding cycles. Thermic response to food is synchronized to the light-dark cycle through a system of circadian clocks present in virtually every organ. Disrupting that synchronization through late-night eating, irregular sleep timing, or significant chronobiological misalignment produces measurable metabolic consequences within days, but restoring synchronization produces equally rapid improvement. According to research, the earliest measurable improvements in metabolic biomarkers following dietary and lifestyle change appear within 3 to 7 days in most individuals, not 3 to 7 weeks. The timeline that most people assume requires months of consistency before producing any result is, at the biological level, compressing into days at the signal level. What takes months is the structural consolidation of those early changes. What takes days is the beginning of the shift. Start today. Not because the change will be complete by the end of the week, but because the biology has already begun responding by the end of tomorrow. I hope this gave you a genuinely different relationship with the pace of change. Drop a comment and tell me what change you are starting today. I read all of them. If this resonated, hit the like button and share it with someone who has been waiting until conditions are perfect to begin. And if you are new to NutriFlow, subscribe and hit the bell. This is exactly the kind of content we make here. See you in the next one.